up for the audience. The idea of like masculine identity, manhood. After making the film, do you have any fresh thoughts on that?
It's very interesting you say that. I think, is this on?
No.
I don't think we need it anyway, do we?
No, that's not good.
Sorry.
Sorry, here, we got you.
Oh, okay,
Hot mic, there you go.
thank you. Because I was born during World War II, I was very much caught up in the romance of war as a child. And I honestly think that making this film cured me of that feeling, that heroic idea. And so that was part of the great gift that I received by making this film. This is a real collaboration. If you can imagine what best gift doing the music to this. She created a level of continuity that was unimaginable without it. And no one had done a score like this for a war film. And so this is one of the great collaborations of my life. The first victory for me is it changed me. In no other way that I knew how to get beyond the romance, the adventure, the myth of war.
Beth, could you speak a little bit about the music and your choices with how you approach the film?
I first watch it over and over, and then sounds start to come, and I recreate them in my studio. I have a tiny one-room little studio with my clarinets, and we hired a cellist. I played all the other instruments though, including the thing that sounds like a banjo. I just reached up, I had this string instrument, and I just
Is there any questions? I have a lot, but I want to let the audience. Yes.
So where did you get all the World War II footage that you?
I looked at every archives that exist that can be accessed through a computer, and also work with someone at the National Endowment in Washington, D.C. I have thousands of hours of looking at World War II footage. And this last screening I had at the United Nations, was a psychologist. A woman said to me, "I think you have post-traumatic stress." And I may very well have. Thousands of hours. And what I did as a filmmaker, I don't know how somehow I memorized what these men were saying. And I cut the documentary footage like fiction. You can't see it, but that's what I did. I shot somebody shooting here, and then it was in a totally different scene, but I put them together as if it was a fiction that was unfolding. Because that was the only way to not illustrate, but kind of illuminate the business of killing. So that's the answer to that.
I feel like you really gave these men like an opportunity to heal with interviewing them. I mean, it is, as making films myself, documentaries, there are moments I related to the film as a filmmaker, because it's like you're letting these guys kind of have a therapy moment or process these really intense moments. Did you get the sense that they had some kind of like level of healing?
With Leo, he was not well, and he had this guy Jimmy live with him to take care of him, And at one point I went to Jimmy when Leo wasn't in the room. I said, I'm feeling very guilty about all this time that I'm talking with Leo on camera. And he said, you don't understand. He comes alive when you come. And so all of them, I just let them go. And I did not judge them. I could never judge them. I love these three men. And I got that right away. I knew they were we were doing, they did me a great service, but I think I did help them as well. But it was just being totally present with each other. And I let them talk. I worked with the one editor for a while, and there's a thing called morphing, where you can trim the people talking, and you won't notice it. It's a secret jump cut. I never use that. I just let them go. That was honoring them, honoring their struggling to tell their story.
Can you talk about how you met them? Or you had your
Go
hand
ahead.
up?
I will get that next. Go ahead.
Did these three guys ever meet each other?
No.
Did they know about each other?
Paul wanted to meet Leo, but Leo was too sick. I was with Leo when he died. Every time I go to visit, I would go and visit without a camera too. And he always said, "My dear friend Bill Farley." I walked in. Yeah, it was a great privilege, and how I found how I got into this was I had a commission to make a film about Elaine Badgley I knew, Harold Kozloff's wife, and it was enough money that I had a shooter, and I was mostly doing questions and setting up shots. But between interviews, we had a break, and Harold told me these three horrific stories about World War II. They out of the blue. And I couldn't get them out of my mind. And about a year went by, and I called Elaine. I said, "Do you think Harold would ever be interested in telling these stories on camera?" And she said, he's been waiting his whole life to tell those stories on camera. So I was in, and I interviewed him, and I didn't know what to do with the material. It was way over my head, way over my myth wall. And I didn't, and then Leo I'd been, Herbert Gold, who died recently, we were very good friends, went to a lot of movies together, and he was friends with Leo Lipbaugh. And through my friendship with her, I met Leo, and then just for the hell of it, I thought, I think I'm going to interview Leo just kind of as a gift to her goal, no agenda. And he was a great storyteller. And so and then a third friend, Jameer, who had died a few years ago, said, one of my neighbors is talking about World War II, and maybe we should have lunch. And once again, I went, and Paul was a terrific storyteller.
So when did you do those interviews? What years?
Harold was the first one, and but I didn't know what to do with it, so that sat, because I didn't know what to do with it. And then I met Leo, and I interviewed him many, many times. And Paul, and then Paul just couldn't do it anymore. So it was over a 5-year period. I want to just one thing about Beth and her, talk about working with someone who can really collaborate. I think we only, myself and Richard Levine, the editor, only changed one section that of the whole. This is the second film we've done together. The first one, she just knocked it out. Showed her the rough cut, well, a refined cut, and she went home and knocked it out. She did the same thing in this film. One final scene, and that was the end of the war. I put a drone in, because there was nothing happy about the guys. They were relieved, but I couldn't have anything celebrative or positive in a way. But that's her gifts.
You had your hand up?
Yeah, I wonder if you've got plans to show this film in school.
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's too far out for lots of audiences. At the same time, I had an incredible thing happen at the United Nations Festival. And that is that it dawned on me from the audience. We had the Q&A, they wouldn't stop. So the people who ran the festival asked to go into the open space, and we did, and they still wouldn't stop. They finally had to throw us out of a building. The people at the film festival wanted to go home. And, but I realized that the first trauma and horror is the boys in combat. The second is their mother, their sister, and their girlfriend. They get the next wave. And those are the people that I'm going to show this film to, and the veterans of every war. It doesn't go away. World War II is the template for this movie. But I was doing some Xeroxes at a copy place in Van Ness, and I had some graphics out, and some woman said, well, my husband was in Afghanistan. He's starting to talk about it a little bit. It's like 12 years later. So people can't get out of it. It takes something out of you that's not replaceable. And we got to talk about it, because I don't understand how we let our children, now girls and boys, suffer this. We've got to find new ways to navigate our differences. It's just impossible to let this happen to the human race.
Because I've been obsessed with Gaza in the last too long.
Yeah.
There was a film that we watched that we became aware of that's tangential, you know, it's like a cousin. And that's a film called 1948, Creation and Catastrophe. So creation of the state of Israel and catastrophe, the Nakba. And like this film, it's just interviewing the people. There were two Israeli Zionist sects, military sects. One was the Haganah and the other was the Irgun. And they went from Palestinian village to Palestinian village and did just what Hamas did, only worse, because they killed people, they committed atrocities, and then those Palestinian people who were in the villages were never allowed to return.
Yes.
And then there were the Palestinians that were from those villages. And you had this sense of a very naive, peaceful people who were very culturally intact and very with each other. And they were, up until that point, there was no conflict between the Jews and the Palestinians. The Jews were very small in number, like 64,000 to 750,000 Palestinians. But in these 2 years, the catastrophe, the Nakba happened, and we could only watch it's an hour and a half, and we could only watch a half an hour at a time.
Yeah.
But this film, like that film, there's nothing like it, because you're sitting with the person who's telling you their story, and you feel like the three people are completely different than each other. And now they're my friend. I know them. And I know that.
And you do know them.
And I do know them. And they've told me where they were coming from. At some level, everybody's the same. And at another level, there were three distinct people who, in their own way, harmed and suffered harm. And, we're so in the context of the footage that you spend 1,000 hours working through, or thousands, you know, with the carnage and the chances of survival being so random and arbitrary and impossible, you know, like being in the snow, I was getting chills. In the snow, in the mud, you know, like it was not comfortable conditions.
I don't think we imagine how awful it is. I was in the Army, and I was quite lucky not to be in combat, but just out of basic training, I was a very dangerous person when I left basic training. I could hurt people. I was capable of hurting people. I had graduated from art school May 19th, 1964. And May 22nd, I was wearing an Army uniform. I was the most unprepared person to be drafted and to be in the Army. But I got lucky. I've always had angels in my life. And I got lucky. And I think these three men are another level of grace that I have received.
If I could have my wish come true, this film would be mandatory for every meeting of the ROTC.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, at the end, when I see their birth and death, I could cry. Yeah. They were so kind to me. And with Paul, he started our first interview. He had written down what he wanted to say, and had a lovely thing happen. These things crazy. And the sound man, I'm sorry, sir, that paper is rattling. You can't read that paper. And he put it down. And they all, obviously, for part of the interview, told the stories they were comfortable with. But the more comfortable they became with me, they just let it out.
We got a couple minutes. Is there any other questions? You have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that it seemed to me because, you know, it's not pleasant to look at old men's faces. And the beautiful music that Beth provided, you know, so you weren't looking at the faces so much, but you knew they were telling the truth. There's something about when somebody's telling the truth, you know, in the sense that they were old and they didn't have anything to lose. They were going to lose their job. They were going to get, you know, there's nothing at stake anymore. And so they were free to tell the truth, and that you were able to bring that continuity to the film, I just thought was extraordinary. And that Farley was able to make a story, as you said, with all the found footage, besides the battle footage. I thought was really extraordinary, wonderful work.
One comment that at one point when we were interviewing, and Paul stopped, he said, and I think it was on camera, but I didn't want to use it. He said, I hope I don't go to jail for what I just told you. It was 75 years ago. It doesn't go away. How can we let children, they're 19 years old, 18 years old, how can we do that? I can't believe it. It's like,
The other thing that I really appreciated was the shots of them when they were young.
yeah.
Because then you have another story, which is that people start young but they get old. And that's a story, you know, that's part of this story.
Subliminally, every chance I had, I threw in the soldiers as boys. Every chance, any time I had a chance to remind you, they're boys. They're not men.
Yeah.
He's 5 years old. But, and Doug Hollis, who we know, I sent this to his brand. I've been on this for years, but this is brand new. Got this Xerox Wednesday. And I sent him, and he said, I opened it up and I started crying, and he sent me a photograph of himself as a soldier at 8 years old. That is, his parents dressed him up. Anyway, I want to thank you for your attention. We've been here a while.
How can folks follow your filmmaking or screenings? What's the best way to do that besides asking for your phone number?
Yeah. Also, we have DVDs for sale, and we have posters. So, through you can get any email I have cards to that give my business card out.
And Beth, if you have some cards, if folks are in need of a music composer, can they ask you? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Happy early New Year.